The summer rain in Seattle had a way of arriving without warning, swift, slanted, almost personal. By the time Nora Reed pushed open the door of Harbor Light Café, she and her 6-year-old daughter were soaked through, hair clinging to their cheeks, shoes squeaking faintly with each step. Warm air wrapped around them the moment they stepped inside. Golden lights glowed above rows of crowded tables, and the scent of espresso and warm pastries drifted gently through the room. Comforting, almost enough to make Nora forget the sting of the rejection she'd received barely 20 minutes ago. Almost. Lily squeezed her mother's fingers tighter. "Mommy, my socks are wet." "I know, sweetheart," Nora murmured, brushing a damp curl from her daughter's forehead. "We'll warm up in a minute." She scanned the cafe quickly, her heart sinking. Every booth, every stool, every tiny corner was filled. People in business attire hunched over laptops or held meetings over cappuccinos. Groups of coworkers laughed at shared jokes. A couple whispered by the pastry case. Only one table was unoccupied, or rather, half unoccupied. In the far corner near the tall arched window sat a man in a charcoal suit, typing with the kind of silent intensity that made him appear carved into the room rather than seated in it. His posture was straight, his expression unreadable behind the faint reflection of the rain-streaked glass. A single untouched cup of coffee sat beside him. Lily tugged her mother's sleeve again. "Mommy, I'm hungry." Nora swallowed hard. She'd done the math already. She did it every night. The amount in her checking account was enough for one modest lunch. Maybe a soup, maybe a kid's meal, but not if they had to go to another cafe. Not in this weather. Not after the bus fare she spent trying to get to that interview. 3 interviews in 1 week. 3 "we'll be in touch" emails that all meant the same thing. She adjusted the strap of the worn shoulder bag hanging at her side, the bag filled with her resume, her old agency ID, her portfolio. "Okay," Nora whispered, "we're staying here." Taking a breath that felt heavier than it should, she guided Lily toward the table by the window. The man didn't notice her at first, not until her shadow crossed his keyboard. He lifted his gaze, and the sudden clarity of his eyes startled her. Gray-blue, cool, focused. "Excuse me," she said softly. He didn't respond. She cleared her throat. "Sorry, would you mind if we share this table? Everywhere else is full." For a moment he simply studied her, not with annoyance, but with calculation, like he was silently piecing something together. His gaze flicked to Lily, then to Nora's damp blouse, then to the frayed edges of her portfolio bag. Finally, he closed his laptop with a decisive click. "I don't mind," he said, "as long as you let me take care of your meal." Nora blinked. Her heart thudded once, sharply. "Oh, no, that's kind, but unnecessary. We're fine." He raised an eyebrow, as though he had heard that line 1,000 times from people who were absolutely not fine. "You look like you've had a long morning," he said quietly. "Allow me." "We really can pay for ourselves," she insisted. He extended a hand across the table, steady and composed. "Adrian Hawthorne." His tone was so assured that Nora found herself shaking his hand before she realized she was doing it. "I'm Nora," she managed. "Nora Reed, and this is my daughter, Lily." Lily gave a tiny wave, her shy smile peeking from behind her curls. "Hi," she squeaked. Adrian's expression softened. Barely, but genuinely. "Hello, Lily." They sat. Nora positioned Lily beside her and tried to calm the uneasy flutter sitting somewhere beneath her ribs. She hated the feeling of taking help. She hated needing it even more. A server approached the table. "Coffee," Adrian said, tapping his cup. "Another one, and whatever they'd like." Lily perked up immediately. "I want grilled cheese and apple juice." Nora exhaled a quiet laugh. "Just tomato soup for me, thank you." Adrian glanced at Nora, then at the server. "Add a turkey panini." Nora snapped her gaze toward him. "I didn't order that." "You should eat more than soup," he replied. "You're freezing and exhausted." Her cheeks warmed. "Do I look that obvious?" He didn't smile, but his voice softened a fraction. "You came straight from a job interview, didn't you?" Nora stiffened. "How did you—" "Portfolio bag," he said. Shoes slightly too dressy for a normal day. Hair smoothed down from rain, not styled. And the look of someone who's had to be strong for too long. She swallowed. "That's accurate." Lily, oblivious to the tension, leaned forward on her elbows. "My mom makes pictures on the computer, really good ones. She used to make lots of them before the company said they didn't need her anymore." "Lily," Nora murmured, mortified. Sweetheart. But it's true, the girl insisted. She's the best designer ever. This time, Adrian actually smiled. Not wide, just a flicker, but real. I believe you, he said gently. Then to Nora, do you have examples with you? She hesitated. Her portfolio was old, her tablet was slow, her best work had been swallowed by layoffs and economic downturns. But Lily looked up at her with so much pride that saying no felt wrong. Yes, Nora said softly. I do. She reached into her bag and pulled out the tablet. It flickered to life with a faint hum. Adrian took it carefully, scrolling through her designs with the same intensity she'd seen when he was typing earlier. Eyes sharp, thoughtful, analytical. Nora watched him, uneasy and hopeful in the same breath. She didn't know him, but something about the moment felt pivotal. At last, Adrian lowered the tablet. These are good, he said. Very good. Nora exhaled, the breath shaky. Thank you. He considered her for another long moment. Then, how would you feel about contributing to a new project? Nora blinked. What? I'm launching a new line of eco-homes. Accessible, community-focused. We need a brand identity that doesn't look like everything else in the tech real estate world. Her pulse sped. You want me to apply? No, he said. I want you to pitch. Before she could speak, the server returned with their meals. Lily immediately grabbed her sandwich, humming happily. Adrian slid his business card across the table. Come next Wednesday, 2 p.m. Ask for me. Nora stared at the card as though it might vanish if she blinked too fast. A chance like this didn't fall into her lap. Not ever. Not in her world. But right now, it had. Lily tugged her sleeve again. Mommy, look, the rain stopped. Nora looked up. Through the window, the storm had eased, leaving streaks of silver light across the wet pavement. Maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something new. Maybe. For a long moment, the only sounds at the table were the soft taps of rain easing against the window and the gentle crackle of Lily tearing open a packet of ketchup. Adrian Hawthorne held Nora's old tablet in both hands, angled slightly away from the candlelight glow above their table. His eyebrows tightened in concentration. His breathing slowed. It was the look of someone who wasn't just scanning work. He was studying it. Nora watched him with her fingers curled against the edge of the table, trying to appear relaxed, but she could tell exactly which project he was looking at just by the tiny flickers in his expression. The brewery logo redesign. He paused there longer, analyzing the angles she'd built into the typography. Then the UI mock-up for a nonprofit app. She saw the faint shift in his jawline, the smallest nod of approval, and finally, the children's product site. His eyes softened almost imperceptibly when he saw the bright hand-drawn illustrations she'd created during the first lockdown, when Lily was only 3 and everything felt uncertain. This, he said finally, still looking at the screen, doesn't feel like the work of someone who has been sitting in hiring lobbies all week. Nora felt a flush rise to her cheeks. I've been freelancing, she said, trying to keep the lights on while applying for full-time roles. But every listing wants someone in office, someone with the newest hardware, a team behind them. And yet, Adrian interrupted, setting the tablet down gently, I've seen entire agencies produce less thoughtful work than what you created in your living room. She blinked. Thank you, she said quietly. That means more than you know. Lily, mouthful of grilled cheese, nodded vigorously beside her. I told you he'd like it, she whispered loudly, spraying crumbs. Adrian's lips twitched in amusement before his expression settled back into something more serious, more intentional. There's something I haven't mentioned yet, he said. Hawthorne Developments is about to launch a new housing line, a departure from our usual luxury buildings. Nora straightened slightly. A new division? More than a division, he replied. A shift. The city needs affordable, sustainable communities, real homes, not glass monuments for the wealthy. So, we're building Harbor Grove. The name lingered in the air. It sounded warm, hopeful, human, very unlike the steel and glass image Hawthorne Developments had cultivated for years. I want Harbor Grove to stand apart, he continued. Different colors, different voice, different ethos, a brand that doesn't look like it was built in a boardroom. Nora swallowed, because she suddenly understood where this was going. And you think I could contribute? She said slowly. I do. He leaned forward, folding his hands. but we're opening the pitch to several agencies. It's competitive. The kind of competitive where most people walk in with teams of 20 and walk out exhausted. Nora forced a breath. So, why include me? Adrian didn't answer right away. He glanced at Lily, who was absorbed in drawing little circles in her leftover ketchup. His gaze softened, barely, but enough for Nora to see the moment something shifted inside him. Then he looked back at Nora. Because your work has heart, he said, and that's the one thing agencies can't manufacture. She didn't know what to say. Praise from bosses in the past had always felt clinical, measured. This felt genuine. But then reality pressed in. I appreciate the opportunity, she said carefully. I really do, but a pitch like that, against agencies with teams and budgets, I'd be walking in almost empty-handed. Yes, Adrian said plainly, it's not a fair playing field. I'm telling you that up front. Nora laughed under her breath, tired, disbelieving. Most people would try to hide that part. Most people don't value honesty, he replied. I do. He reached into the inside pocket of his suit jacket and pulled out a sleek black business card, but he didn't hand it to her immediately. Instead, he flipped it between his fingers, studying her face with unsettling accuracy. You look like someone who's learned to survive on little, he said quietly. Someone who has taken care of everyone else for a long time. Someone who deserves a chance that life hasn't been generous enough to give. Nora felt her throat tighten. He said it so matter-of-factly, she couldn't even be offended. He was simply naming what he saw. This pitch, he continued, might be that chance. He set the card on the table and nudged it toward her with 2 fingers, slow, deliberate. Nora didn't reach for it, not yet. Her heart raced. She could almost hear the numbers in her bank account whispering at her, reminding her of rent, groceries, overdue bills. It felt too big, too sudden, too improbable. Then she heard a tiny voice beside her. Mommy? Lily leaned closer, resting her chin on her palms while looking at the business card with round, curious eyes. Is that for us? Nora looked down at her daughter, this small, hopeful child who always saw the best in everyone, who trusted her mother to make the right choices, who believed in her talent even when Nora doubted it herself. Maybe this wasn't luck. Maybe it wasn't danger. Maybe it was a door opening after too many had slammed shut. She reached for the card at last, fingers brushing the embossed lettering. Adrian Hawthorne, Chief Executive Officer Hawthorne, Developments, beneath it, a handwritten number, his personal line. When is the pitch? She asked quietly. Next Wednesday, he replied. 2 p.m., you'll present last. Last? It keeps the agencies nervous, he said, then added in a softer tone, and it gives you more time to prepare. She nodded slowly. All right, Nora said. I'll do it. Adrian's gaze held hers, not triumphant, not expectant, just steady. Good, he said. Lily beamed. Mommy, you're going to make houses look pretty. Nora laughed, brushing her daughter's cheek. Something like that, sweetheart. The rain outside lightened to a gentle drizzle, and sunlight began to push through the cloud cover, scattering faint reflections across the window like falling silver. Nora slipped the card into her bag, aware that everything had just changed. She didn't know if it would lead to hope or heartbreak. But she knew one thing. It was a risk she needed to take, and for the first time in a long while, that thought didn't terrify her. It thrilled her. 5 days. That was all the time Nora Reed had to prepare something that usually required a full design team, a strategist, a copywriter, 3 art directors, and a coordinator whose entire job was to keep everyone sane. But Nora had none of those. She had a dining table covered in sketches, a laptop that wheezed whenever she opened too many files, and a daughter who fell asleep curled against her side while she color-corrected brand palettes at 2 a.m. By the 5th night, exhaustion sat beneath her skin like a second heartbeat, but so did determination. The following morning, she walked Lily across the hall to Mrs. Alvarez's apartment. The older woman opened the door with her usual warmth. Go, Mrs. Alvarez urged, placing a flour-dusted hand on Nora's shoulder. Do your big presentation. I'll make sure this little one is fed and happy. Lily hugged her mother tightly. Good luck, Mommy. You're gonna win. Nora wished she had her daughter's certainty. She pressed a kiss to Lily's hair, squared her shoulders, and headed for Hawthorne Tower. Seattle's sky was a pale slate that morning, clouds low enough to brush the tops of the skyscrapers. Hawthorne Tower rose through the mist. Sleek, silver, intimidating. Nora paused in front of its glass doors, gripping her bag tighter than she meant to. Inside, the lobby hummed with people in tailored suits. Screens cycled through real estate developments worth more than she would earn in a lifetime. The receptionist directed her to the executive floors. The elevator ride felt endless. By the time the doors opened onto a hallway lined with abstract art and frosted glass offices, her palms were damp. But nothing could have prepared her for what she saw next. The assistant at the reception desk led her into a waiting area outside Conference Suite A. Through the glass wall, Nora could see 3 teams, each with matching laptops, coordinated color palettes, stacks of printed pitch decks, and teams of designers reviewing notes. Then there was her, a single freelancer with a thrift store blazer and a tablet that sometimes froze when the battery hit 20%. The assistant offered a clipboard. "You'll present after them, Ms. Reed. Mr. Hawthorne sends his regrets. He's in an investor meeting downtown." Nora tried not to let the disappointment show. Adrian had been the one who encouraged her to pitch. Having him there would have grounded her, even just a little. Instead, she felt like she'd been thrown to the wolves. She took a seat at the far end of the room. The first agency was called inside. Their team filed in with confident smiles, pulling rolling cases behind them. Through the glass, Nora watched the beginning of their presentation. Animated slides, drone footage, charts that spun and shifted. She swallowed hard. The second agency went next. More suits, more polished voices, more flawless transitions. Then the third. They joked with the executives. People laughed. Someone even snapped a photo with the CMO. Nora's stomach tightened. She shouldn't be here. She knew that feeling far too well. The sensation of being out of place, of being allowed into a room only because no one remembered to close the door. When her name was finally called, the silence in her chest was deafening. She stepped into the conference room, and every head turned toward her. 12 executives in tailored attire, 2 directors from product development, several members of the marketing team, and Victoria Grant, the CMO, sharp-eyed, elegant, expression unreadable. Nora connected her tablet to the display screen. The device flickered nervously, as though it too felt the pressure. She steadied her breath. "Good afternoon," Nora began. "My name is Nora Reed. I'm an independent designer based here in Seattle. I appreciate the chance to show you what I've created." There was no animation, no dramatic entrance, just her first slide. A quiet illustration of a neighborhood surrounded by green spaces, children running between townhomes, a community garden at the center. She clicked to the next slide. "I focused on connection," she said. "Harbor Grove shouldn't feel like another corporate development. It should feel like a place where people live, where families grow, where someone like my daughter could play safely." The room remained still. She showed hand-drawn icons, simple font pairings, color palettes inspired by moss, cedar, and morning light over Elliott Bay. Slide by slide, her voice found more confidence. "I believe homes should feel like they belong to the people living in them, not just to the developers who build them. So, this brand identity leans into warmth, accessibility, and community. And if Harbor Grove succeeds in helping families find stability, then its design should reflect that." She clicked to the final slide, an overview of everything she'd created in 5 nights. And then silence. Not the silence of awe, not the silence of excitement, the silence of people who didn't see her, who had already made up their minds. Victoria Grant tapped her pen against her tablet, then spoke. "Thank you, Ms. Reed. We'll review all submissions and reach out by the end of next week." That was it. No questions, no discussion, no curiosity, just dismissal disguised as politeness. Nora disconnected her tablet. She nodded, thanked them, and walked out of the room without letting the sting reach her expression. But in the hallway, just far enough away that no one could see, she paused. She pressed her hand to the railing, letting the cool metal steady her. She'd given everything, every late night, every sketch, every moment of hope she could afford. And in return, she felt like she'd been placed on display just to fill a time slot. A formality. A checkbox. A courtesy offered by powerful people who would forget her name by the end of the afternoon. The elevator doors opened, and she stepped inside, her throat tight. Lily's voice echoed in her mind. "You're gonna win." She wished she believed that, but as the elevator descended, Nora felt the heavy truth settle over her. The room had never been built for someone like her. Not yet. Not today. And maybe not ever. The air outside Hawthorne Tower was damp and metallic. still carrying the sting of the morning drizzle. Nora stepped onto the sidewalk, clutching her tablet against her chest as though it were the only thing holding her together. Her mind replayed every second of the pitch, every slide, every silent expression from the panel, every moment she felt the room slipping away from her. She didn't even realize her phone was vibrating until the third buzz. A message from Mrs. Alvarez. "Nora, Hija, come home. Lily isn't well. Fever, throat pain." Her breath caught. The rest of the world, the skyscrapers, the pedestrians, the traffic, blurred into nothingness as instinct took over. She sprinted toward the bus stop, nearly stumbling as she boarded, her heart pounding and her thoughts fragmenting into fear. By the time she reached their apartment building, her lungs burned. She pushed open the door to Mrs. Alvarez's unit and found her elderly neighbor pacing, worry etched into her face. "She got warm so fast," Mrs. Alvarez explained. Then she said her throat hurt. "I gave her some water, but it didn't help." Nora rushed inside. Lily was curled on the couch, cheeks red, blonde hair damp with sweat, small fingers clutching her stuffed raccoon. "Mommy." Lily's voice was paper thin. Nora knelt beside her, pushing damp curls from her forehead. "I'm here, sweetheart. I'm right here." She stayed there for hours, holding, cooling, comforting, while the night thickened outside and the shadows in their apartment lengthened. She didn't eat. She didn't change out of her interview clothes. She didn't even turn on the lamp. She just sat in the dim living room with a warm cloth and silent prayers. Around 2 a.m, Lily stirred, her voice hoarse. "It hurts to swallow." "I know," Nora whispered, brushing her fingers along the little girl's cheek. "We'll see a doctor first thing in the morning." But first thing came with a fever of 103 degrees and red patches blooming along Lily's throat. Panic closed around Nora's chest like a vice. She wrapped Lily in a blanket, grabbed her bag, and called for a rideshare she absolutely couldn't afford. The hospital loomed large and cold as they hurried through the automatic doors. St. Augustine Medical Center was already swarming with early morning emergencies, men clutching injured wrists, a teenage boy coughing into a mask, an older woman gripping her chest. The harsh fluorescent lights washed everything in pale uncertainty. Nora filled out forms one-handed while cradling Lily against her shoulder. The little girl whimpered every time she swallowed. An hour passed, then 2. Finally, a triage nurse called them in. The doctor examined Lily with gentle efficiency, shining a light into her tiny mouth, listening to her breathing, tapping the swollen lymph nodes under her jaw. "It's a severe throat infection," he said, "borderline strep. She'll need antibiotics, plenty of fluids, and rest." Relief sagged through Nora until the pharmacist rang up the prescription, $94. She stared at the number on the screen as though it were a misprint. Her insurance deductible hadn't been met yet. The cost was out of pocket. 94, she repeated quietly. Her checking account had, 29? Maybe 33 if the freelance invoice cleared today. Utilities were due next week. Rent the week after. Food. She didn't even want to think about food. The pharmacist offered a sympathetic smile, but sympathy didn't lower the price. "We'll need payment today," he said. "Sorry. Policy." Nora nodded stiffly and stepped aside, holding the prescription bag she hadn't yet paid for. Lily's head rested on her shoulder, fever warm, trusting. What bill could she delay? Power? Internet? Rent? Rent meant eviction. Power meant darkness. Internet meant she couldn't work or apply for jobs. She pressed her forehead to Lily's hair, trying to hold herself still. Then her phone rang, a number she didn't recognize. "Ms. Reed?" a sharp, clipped voice asked before she even said hello. "This is Jenna, Mr. Hawthorne's assistant. He's wondering why you missed your 9 a.m. follow-up meeting." Nora stared into the bright pharmacy lights, disbelief mixing with exhaustion. "What follow-up meeting?" she asked. "I wasn't told about any follow-up." "That's odd," Jenna said, her tone cool. "Mr. Hawthorne had it on his schedule. He expected you." "I'm at the hospital," Nora said, her patience fraying. "My daughter is sick. Very sick." A pause, then whispering. Nora could hear muffled voices in the background, Jenna speaking to someone, perhaps Adrian himself. Then Jenna returned. "Mr. Hawthorne wants to know which pharmacy you're using." Nora stiffened. "Why does that matter?" "He didn't say, just asked for the name and prescription details." The frustration, fear, financial strain, lack of sleep, all of it finally cracked. "I don't appreciate being monitored," Nora said sharply. "My child is sick. That's all you need to know." "I understand," Jenna said, though she didn't sound like she meant it. "But I need the pharmacy information." Nora closed her eyes. She was too tired to fight anymore. "Fine," she said, reciting the address. 10 minutes passed. Nora hadn't moved from the plastic chair. Her head rested against the wall, her arms wrapped tightly around Lily. Tears burned behind her eyes, not from weakness, but from sheer overwhelm. Then, "Ms. Reed?" The pharmacist approached hesitantly. "Your daughter's medication has been taken care of." Nora blinked. "What?" "It's been paid for." He handed her the bag. "And there's a car waiting outside for you." She stared at him. "What car?" "A black SUV. They said they were sent by a Mr. Hawthorne." Nora felt a complicated flood of emotions. Relief, confusion, irritation, gratitude knitted together with something else she couldn't name. Her phone vibrated again. A text from an unknown number. "Get Lily well. We need to talk. Your presentation was the only one that mattered. A.H." Nora looked down at her sleeping daughter, her tiny hands curled against her chest. She whispered, almost to herself, "What are you doing in our lives, Adrian Hawthorne?" The rain had begun again, soft, steady, the kind that blurred the world into watercolor shapes behind the hospital's sliding doors. Nora stepped outside carrying Lily in her arms, unsure whether she should feel grateful or deeply unsettled. The black SUV waited at the curb, engine humming low. Its headlights cut two narrow beams through the mist. The driver stepped out the moment he saw her. "Ms. Reed," he asked politely. "Mr. Hawthorne asked me to take you and your daughter home. Please, let me help." Nora hesitated. Not because she feared danger. Adrian Hawthorne was powerful, not reckless, but because help from men like him never came free. Not in her experience, not in anyone's experience. Still, Lily was half asleep on her shoulder, hot with fever, her small body exhausted. Nora nodded and allowed the driver to take her bag, then climbed inside the back seat. The interior smelled faintly of leather and cedar. The seats were soft, too soft for someone who had spent years riding city buses and second-hand ride shares. Nora settled Lily beside her. The little girl instantly curled against her side. Her phone buzzed. A text glowed across the screen. "Just focus on her. We'll talk soon. A.H." Nora stared at the message until the screen dimmed. She didn't respond. She didn't know how. As the SUV pulled away, raindrops streaked the windows like silver threads. City lights stretched into long, trembling lines. Everything outside felt distant, almost unreal. Inside, the car was warm and quiet. Nora pressed a hand to Lily's forehead, still warm, but the medication seemed to be helping. She brushed her palm gently along her daughter's cheek. "Mommy," Lily murmured. "Yes, sweetness?" "Are we going home?" "Yes," Nora whispered. "We're going home." But the truth was, she wasn't sure what home meant anymore, not after today, not after Adrian stepped into their lives so forcefully, so unexpectedly. She tightened her hold around Lily and watched the rain blur the skyline. What was his role in all of this? A benefactor? A guilt-ridden billionaire? A man trying to smooth over his company's failures? Or something else entirely, something she wasn't ready to understand? For the first time in years, Nora felt as though she was on a path someone else had drawn, and she didn't know whether she was being led toward opportunity or danger. The SUV stopped in front of her apartment building. The driver helped her out, offered a soft, "Get well soon," then disappeared into the fog. Nora carried Lily inside and shut the door firmly behind her. The apartment was dim, quiet, familiar, the kind of place where her life made sense. And yet now it felt too small, or maybe she suddenly felt too visible. She laid Lily on their worn couch, covered her with a blanket, and sank into the armchair across from her. The exhaustion hit like a wave, but she kept herself awake long enough to read Adrian's text. Again, "Just focus on her. We'll talk soon." She didn't know what soon meant, but she felt it. Whatever conversation awaited her with Adrian Hawthorne wasn't going to be simple. Days blurred, the fever broke, the antibiotics worked. Lily slowly returned to her cheerful whirlwind self, drawing in her coloring books, humming to herself, dancing around the living room with her stuffed raccoon. And Nora returned to her routine, freelance work, job applications, stretching groceries as far as they could go. 3 weeks passed. Then, one Tuesday morning, while Lily was eating cereal and humming at the table, Nora heard the familiar ping of an incoming email. She wiped her hands on a dish towel and opened her laptop. The sender: Hawthorne Developments, Creative Department. Subject line: Harbor Grove Pitch Outcome. Nora clicked, bracing herself. The message was short, formal, and life-changing. Dear Ms. Reed, we are pleased to inform you that your proposal has been selected. Our team was impressed by your vision, authenticity, and commitment to community-centered design. You are invited to join us as a 6-month consultant for the Harbor Grove project. Flexible hours, hybrid schedule. Please review the attached contract and meet with HR at your convenience. We look forward to working with you. Hawthorne Developments. Nora read it once, twice. A third time because her mind couldn't catch up. I got it, she whispered under her breath. Lily looked up from her cereal. Got what? Nora laughed, choked, and cried all at once. Mommy got the job, baby. Lily squealed and hugged her legs. I knew you'd win. Nora buried her face in her daughter's hair, whispering thank yous to a universe she'd been convinced forgot her. The next day marked her first morning in the Hawthorne office. Her badge buzzed her in. People nodded politely as she passed. A few smiled, kind, curious. Some looked surprised, and some looked cautious. Her first week blurred into a rhythm. Morning meetings, brand reviews, drafting new concepts, sending files for feedback, answering emails at midnight because she wanted so badly to prove she belonged here. And Adrian Hawthorne, he was everywhere and nowhere. He didn't visit her desk. He didn't reference the hospital. He didn't ask how Lily was. Instead, he appeared only during project reviews, standing with the leadership team, tall and composed, offering feedback in short, precise sentences. His voice was steady, distant, almost cold. Slide 3 is too dense. Simplify the messaging. Color palette needs more cohesion. Try removing the serif font entirely. No warmth, no small talk. No mention of the SUV, the paid prescription, or the text he'd sent at dawn. It was as if the man behind the glass, the one who saw her in a cafe, who read her portfolio with surprising softness, who paid for her daughter's medication, had stepped quietly into the shadows. And in his place stood Adrian the executive, Adrian the CEO, Adrian the man who kept a polite, crisp distance. It should have made things easier, but somehow it didn't. Somehow, his absence felt louder than his presence. One afternoon, while Nora adjusted color values on a logo mock-up, she glanced through the glass wall of her shared office and saw him walking down the hall, tall, purposeful, unreadable. He didn't look her way, but something inside her shifted anyway, because it was clear now. Whatever Adrian Hawthorne wanted, it wasn't gratitude, it wasn't praise, and it wasn't recognition. It was something deeper, something guarded, something she couldn't see yet. The man behind the glass was a puzzle, and somehow she'd ended up holding the first piece. The elevator ride to the top floor felt different this time, quieter, slower, almost ceremonial. Nora watched the numbers flick upward, her reflection faint in the brushed steel walls. Her blouse was neatly pressed, her hair pinned back, her nerves swirling just beneath the surface. Gretchen had appeared at her desk 20 minutes earlier with her usual composed smile and a simple message. Mr. Hawthorne would like to see you in his office. Not the conference room, not the creative wing, his office. When the elevator chimed open, the executive floor greeted her, with its soft carpeting, muted lighting, and the distant view of the bay glimmering through towering windows. Gretchen led her down the hallway and opened the heavy glass door. Adrian stood near the far wall, one hand slipped into his pocket, the other resting on the edge of the window frame. The entire city sprawled beneath him. Gray blues of the water, slick lines of downtown towers, ferries sliding through the sound like quiet ghosts. He turned when he heard the door. Nora, he said, and though the word was simple, it carried a warmth he rarely let slip in the office. Come in. She approached cautiously, not sure what version of him she would face today. The CEO with the clipped voice and immaculate self-control, or the man who had waited in a rain-splattered cafe and paid quietly for a prescription he never mentioned again. I'm not in trouble, am I? She attempted lightly. He exhaled a laugh. No, quite the opposite. He gestured toward the seating area in the corner. two low leather chairs facing a small table that held a single ceramic mug, still steaming. Coffee for him, she assumed. Tea, if he'd thought of her. She sat down. He remained standing for a moment, as if still gathering his words, then joined her. "I've been reviewing the Harbor Grove progress," he began. "Your work has been exceptional." Nora glanced down, flustered. Praise from colleagues was one thing. Praise from Adrian Hawthorne was like sunlight after a long storm. "Thank you," she murmured, "but that's not why I asked you here." He leaned forward slightly, forearms resting on his knees. "I'd like to propose something more permanent." More permanent. The words trembled through her. He slid a folder toward her. Nora opened it slowly. Inside was an offer letter printed on heavy stock, the lettering crisp and official. Her eyes widened as she skimmed the details. Lead designer, full-time, equity in the project, salary range. She swallowed hard. It was nearly double her consultant rate, more than she had ever dreamed someone like her, single mom, ex-freelancer, survivor of too many closed doors, could earn. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Say you'll consider it," Adrian replied. "You deserve something stable." He paused. "And flexible." Her eyes lifted. "Flexible? I know Lily needs you at unpredictable times," he said. "This role includes hybrid work options. You'd set your own hours. You would only need to be on site for major reviews." Her heartbeat stumbled. "You remembered." "I pay attention," he said quietly. A beat of silence stretched between them, softened by the muted hum of the city below. Then Adrian cleared his throat and shifted, as though stepping carefully across an invisible line. "How is she?" he asked. "Lily?" Nora blinked at the change of tone, gentle, almost vulnerable. "She's doing well," Nora said. "She's drawing again, running around like the world can't catch her." "Good," he murmured. "I'm glad." Another pause, another unspoken inch closer. Then, "I was thinking, maybe the three of us could get dinner sometime to celebrate your decision. If you say yes, of course." Nora stilled. Dinner, not coffee, not an email, not a review meeting. Dinner. She wasn't naive. She knew what that meant, or what it could mean. And yet there was something in Adrian's voice, careful, hesitant, almost unsure, that made her realize he wasn't proposing anything romantic. Not yet. It was something simpler. A thank you, maybe. A chance to spend time where office walls didn't press so tightly around him. She opened her mouth to respond, and the office door burst open. "Adrian!" The voice sliced through the room, sharp and entitled. A woman strode in with the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. She was striking. Tall, sculpted cheekbones, espresso dark hair that fell in loose waves over a cream blazer that probably cost more than Nora's rent. "Olivia," Adrian said through a tightening jaw. "You can't just walk in." "I knocked," she said, though she clearly hadn't. "You didn't answer." Only then did her gaze land on Nora. It swept from her hair to her shoes like a scanner, cataloging, evaluating, dismissing. "Oh," Olivia said, her smile tightening. "You have company." Nora stood instinctively, smoothing her blouse. "I'm Nora Reed," she offered politely. "I know," Olivia replied, and extended a hand. "Olivia Hart, Ava's aunt." Ava. The name landed like cold water. Nora had heard it whispered among co-workers, the little girl who had died years ago, the daughter of Adrian's late wife, the tragedy that cast a long shadow over the Hawthorne family. So, this woman, this sharp-eyed, poised, assessing woman, was Catherine Hawthorne's sister. Olivia turned back toward Adrian. "We need to talk. Now." "This is not a good time," he said firmly. She arched a manicured brow. "Since when do I need an appointment?" Adrian inhaled slowly, steadying himself. "I'm in the middle of something." "No," Olivia corrected, glancing again at Nora. "You're in the middle of someone." Heat rose to Nora's cheeks, the insult threaded neatly between the syllables. "Enough," Adrian said sharply, but Olivia only folded her arms, victorious. Nora reached for the folder on the table, her voice calm despite the tension tightening her spine. "I should go," she said softly. "Thank you for the offer, Adrian. I'll look over the details tonight." He stood as she did, their eyes met. "This wasn't how I wanted this to go," he murmured. She offered a tight, brave smile. "It rarely goes how any of us expect." And then she left the office, Olivia's perfume lingering in the hallway behind her like a territorial claim. As Nora walked back toward her workspace, the city spinning far below, one truth pressed deep into her mind. The world Adrian lived in wasn't just polished glass and million-dollar views. It was full of ghosts, of unspoken grief, of family ties knotted so tightly they cut through anyone who got too close. And now she had stepped directly into the center of it. She wasn't sure yet whether she wanted to run or stay long enough to understand the man behind all these shadows. The apartment was quiet that night, too quiet, the kind of quiet that always made Nora uneasy, as though the walls themselves were holding their breath. Lily had fallen asleep early, curled in her blanket fort on the couch, her crayons scattered across the floor like tiny, colorful footprints. Nora cleaned around her softly, gathering the pencils and the small plastic stencils shaped like stars and butterflies. Her mind, however, was miles away, still suspended in the tension-filled triangle of the afternoon. Adrian, the job offer, Olivia, the sharp, assessing gaze that felt like it could carve straight through her skin. Nora sat at the small kitchen table, its surface scarred by water rings and years of hurried breakfasts. She pulled out her notebook, ready to calculate what life might look like if she accepted the lead designer position. More income, yes. Stability, yes. Dreams, maybe, but the numbers didn't fix everything. The rent had already increased twice this year. Lily's hospital bills still lingered. Groceries, commute, childcare, half her paycheck would evaporate before it even arrived. She opened her laptop to check her bank balance, and that was when she saw it. A new email, bold and unread. Subject, notice to vacate, 30 days. Her stomach dropped. She clicked it open, each sentence slicing through her composure one clean edge at a time. We regret to inform you that the property located at 22 Oak Shore Avenue will be undergoing redevelopment and conversion into high-end residential units. Current tenants are required to vacate the premises within 30 days. New property ownership, Hawthorne Holdings. Hawthorne Holdings. The name blinked like an accusation on the screen. Her first instinct was denial, a mistake, a coincidence, a separate entity entirely, but the truth crept in like a cold draft. Hawthorne Holdings was one of Adrian's investment arms, or at least part of the massive empire under his surname. A chill ran up her spine. Was this connected? Was it pressure? A convenient coincidence? Or something scripted to tighten its grip around her life? She clenched her hands together until her knuckles blanched. No, he wouldn't do that. He wouldn't use Lily. He wouldn't use a home, her sanctuary, to manipulate her, would he? The question alone made her nauseous. Her phone buzzed. She jumped at the sound. A call. Unknown number, but not a spam number. An East Coast area code. Nora hesitated, then answered. Hello? A refined older voice flowed through the speaker. Soft, polished, almost regal. Miss Reed, the woman said. Good evening. I hope I'm not calling too late. Nora straightened instinctively, though the woman couldn't see her. Who is this? My name is Margaret Hawthorne. A beat. Adrian's mother. Nora's pulse stumbled. Mrs. Hawthorne, she said slowly, unsure whether this was a courtesy or a warning. I wasn't expecting your call. No, I imagine you weren't, Margaret said, her tone gentle in a way that didn't soften the steel beneath it. I would like to meet you, for tea, tomorrow, if you're available. May I ask what this is about? Nora's fingers tightened around the edge of the table. Margaret chuckled softly, though there was no humor in it. My dear, when a woman enters my son's orbit, I prefer to understand her intentions, especially when a child is involved. Nora froze. Lily, how do you know about my daughter? She whispered. I make it my business to know such things, Margaret replied. Children complicate matters, Miss Reed. I want to ensure that yours and mine are not placed in harm's way. Nora felt her breath turn thin. This wasn't a simple invitation. It was a summons. I don't know if tomorrow, Margaret repeated calmly. The Fairmont, noon, I'll have a table prepared. Before Nora could respond, the line clicked. Silence swallowed the room again. She stared at her phone as though it might offer more explanation. But it didn't. Only the reflection of her own face in the dim screen, worried, tired, caught in a storm she didn't understand. Before she could gather her thoughts, the phone buzzed again. This time, a message from Adrian. I just learned about your building. I had no involvement in the acquisition. Please meet me tomorrow at 9 a.m. We need to talk. Her pulse thudded. He knew about the eviction. He wanted to explain. She exhaled, half in relief, half in frustration. Was he honest? Was he hiding something? Was he trying to fix it, or trying to cover it? Before she could decide, another notification appeared. This one wasn't from a saved contact. A new message. 10 a.m. at Willow and Pine. Let's talk before you believe everything he tells you. Olivia. Nora closed her eyes. 3 meetings, 3 Hawthorns, 3 different truths, 3 different agendas. 1 woman, 1 daughter, and a single, unraveling thread connecting them all. She shut her laptop, the eviction email still burning behind her eyelids. The weight of it pressed heavily on her chest. Then she walked toward the couch, kneeling beside Lily's sleeping form. She brushed her daughter's hair back and kissed her forehead gently. "We'll figure this out," she whispered. "I promise." But inside, she wasn't sure whom she should fear more. Adrian, the man who walked like he carried storms in his chest. Olivia, the woman who saw danger everywhere except within herself. Or Margaret, the matriarch whose voice sounded like velvet and authority woven together. What she knew for certain was this. She and Lily were standing at the edge of something large, tangled, and unfinished. And tomorrow, when she met the Hawthorns one by one, she would finally learn just how deep that tangle went, and what role they expected her to play in the center of it. The apartment was still dark when Nora woke the next morning. Gray dawn filtered through the blinds, faint and cold, stretching thin stripes across the living room floor. Lily was still asleep, her tiny hand curled around one of her stuffed animals, breathing softly, unaware of the storm building around them. Nora slipped quietly into the small sitting area and opened her laptop. If she was going to face 3 Hawthorns today, she needed to understand what she was walking into. Everything. Not just whispers, not just rumors. She typed 2 words into the search bar. Hawthorne family accident. It took less than a second for the results to appear. Hundreds of headlines, articles, opinion pieces, and photographs. Her heart pounded as she clicked the first link. Tragic boating accident claims lives of Elise Hawthorne and daughter Ava. Investigators cite unexpected storm and structural failure. Hawthorne family retreats from public view. She skimmed through paragraphs, winds shifting, waves rising, the boat capsizing in minutes, a rescue team arriving too late, Adrian surviving after hours in the water, Elise and Ava lost. Her vision blurred slightly. Another headline caught her eye. Custody dispute emerges between Elise's sister, Olivia Hart, and the Hawthorne estate. Questions remain about Adrian's role in the accident. There it was, the shadow Olivia had implied. The grief, the accusations, the fracture running straight through the family. With trembling fingers, Nora clicked the photo attached to one article, a family portrait. It must have been taken a year or 2 before the accident. Adrian younger, softer around the edges. His arm around a woman with sun-kissed skin and chestnut hair, Elise, smiling warmly at the camera. Between them stood a little girl, Ava. She wore a pale blue dress and held a small seashell, grinning with childlike pride. But what froze Nora wasn't Ava's smile, it was the dimple in her left cheek, the same dimple Lily had when she laughed when she asked for pancakes, when she scrunched her nose at peas. The resemblance was unsettling, eerie even, not identical, but close enough that anyone might glance twice. Nora leaned back, pressing a hand to her mouth. Something inside her twisted painfully. She couldn't tell if it was guilt, fear, or a strange kind of sadness. Was this the reason Adrian noticed them at the café? Was this the reason his mother was calling, Olivia warning, the company circling? She felt suddenly seen and unseen at the same time, as if someone had placed her life under a microscope without consent. A soft thunk broke her thoughts. Footsteps in the hallway. Nora hurriedly shut the laptop as Lily padded out of the bedroom, yawning. "Mommy," she murmured, crawling into her lap. "It's morning." "Yes, sweetheart." Nora kissed the top of her head. "It's morning." But the day ahead felt anything but gentle. By the time Nora left the apartment, the air outside carried the faint taste of sea salt drifting in from the sound. The Hawthorne Tower glinted sharply against the sky as she approached, all glass and steel and height, beautiful but cold. She arrived at the elevator lobby just as the door slid open, revealing a tall, sandy-haired man holding a tablet. His badge read, Dylan Reyes, Chief Financial Officer. He looked up, surprised but friendly. "Oh, Nora, right? You're working with the Harbor Grove Division." "Trying to," she answered with a faint smile. He stepped in beside her and pressed the mezzanine button. "You're here early," he noted. "I have a meeting," Nora said carefully. He chuckled under his breath. "Let me guess, with Adrian." Nora didn't confirm, but Dylan read her silence. His tone softened. "Look," he said, "I know things get said about him, articles, speculation, but grief does strange things to people, and in my experience, Adrian Hawthorne is nothing like the headlines." Nora studied him. "You know him well? Well enough to know the world rarely gives him the benefit of the doubt." Before she could respond, the elevator slowed. Dylan glanced at her, something like sincerity shining through the numbers and spreadsheets. "Just keep an open mind. He isn't the villain in the stories people like to tell." A small pause. "And he's not the hero either. He's just a man trying not to drown." The doors opened, leaving Nora alone with more questions and fewer answers. Her first meeting was at 9 a.m. Adrian was already in the mezzanine conference room, standing near the window, shoulders hunched, an unfamiliar posture for someone who usually carried himself like a steel column in human form. But that moment would come later. Right now, Nora walked the hallway slowly, rehearsing what she would say, how she would say it. Anger, confusion, gratitude, suspicion, so many threads pulling at once. She needed clarity before stepping into any of their worlds. At 10 a.m., she was expected 2 blocks away, at a quiet corner café tucked beneath the shadows of the tower. Olivia would be there, waiting with her sharp eyes and sharper tongue, holding her own version of truth. A truth dipped in bitterness, maybe, but still a truth. Nora wasn't naive enough to walk into that conversation unprepared, and at noon, her final meeting. Margaret Hawthorne, the matriarch, the woman with the velvet knife voice. Nora had never set foot inside the Lakeside Fairmont Lounge. She imagined the clink of expensive china, the hush of wealth that never needed to raise its voice, the circle of influential women who could break someone's life with a gentle suggestion. She dreaded that meeting most, because it wouldn't be a lecture, it wouldn't be gossip, it wouldn't be insults, it would be power, and there was no way to predict how Margaret planned to wield it. As Nora returned home, briefly to gather her things, she paused at the small living room table. Her laptop still sat there, slightly open, the faint glow of the screen illuminating the edge of the family photo she'd forgotten to close. She touched the trackpad. The image brightened again. Adrian, Elise, Ava, 3 faces smiling at a future that never happened, a future that shattered in deep water, a future that, in the strangest twist of fate, brushed up against her own. Something tightened in her chest, not pity, not confusion, but a quiet, complicated ache. She whispered to the empty room, "I don't know what you want from me, Adrian, but I'll find out today." She grabbed her bag, slipped on her coat, and closed the door gently behind her. 3 meetings, 3 truths, 3 secrets waiting in 3 different rooms. By sunset, she would know the full story. And by then, she also knew, nothing in her life would be the same. Seattle's morning haze clung low over the streets as Nora stepped into the mezzanine conference room of Hawthorne Tower. Adrian was already there, standing beside the long window, the city reflecting faintly in the glass. When he turned, the usual shielded calm in his eyes was missing. Something raw stood in its place. "Thank you for coming," he said quietly. "I know today won't be easy." Nora didn't sit. "I need the truth first, all of it, before anything else." Adrian nodded, almost in relief, as if he'd been waiting for permission to stop pretending. "When I saw Lily that day in the café," he paused, swallowing hard. "It felt like someone had punched the air right out of me. She reminded me of Ava. Not completely. Just enough that," he exhaled sharply. "It wasn't rational. It wasn't planned. It just hit me. And I didn't know what to do with that feeling." Nora crossed her arms, guarding herself. "So, you offered me a contract, a job, a promotion, because Lily looks like someone you lost?" "No." His answer came fast, almost wounded. "The work, your work, is real. The pitch was real. The board's approval was real. Everything professional was earned, Nora. Everything." He stepped closer, but kept a respectful distance. "What wasn't real," he continued, voice softer, "was my ability to handle the situation gracefully. I tried to separate what I felt from what I offered you. And I failed." The admission stunned her, not because of its meaning, but because of who was saying it. Adrian Hawthorne was not a man who apologized easily. "And you didn't tell me about the building?" she asked. He shook his head. I should have. I should have checked the acquisition list. The moment I found out, I tried to stop it. But these deals move like freight trains. Once the papers are signed, they don't stop for anyone, even me. Your mother called me, Nora said. A muscle in his jaw twitched. I suspected she might. And Olivia, she added. His expression darkened again. Of course she did. Nora inhaled, steady. They each have their version, their reasons, their warnings. Adrian held her gaze without flinching. I won't tell you to ignore them, he said. I won't tell you to trust me either. I'll only tell you this. I never intended to drag you or Lily into my past. But when I realized what I was feeling, it scared me, and I mishandled everything. He looked down, hands resting lightly on the back of a chair. But whatever you decide after today, I want it to be your decision. Not fear, not pressure, not someone else's story. For the first time, Nora believed he meant it. Thank you, she whispered, though gratitude felt tangled with uncertainty. Adrian didn't try to stop her as she left. He simply said, Whatever happens next, Nora, I hope you know I've only ever wanted good things for you both. She nodded once and walked out, the first voice, the first version of truth. The cafe Olivia chose for their meeting was bright and minimalistic, the sort of place people came to post latte art on social media. Olivia fit right in with her perfectly cut trench coat, her hair swept back as if wind itself feared to touch her. She didn't bother with greetings. You spoke to him already. Nora sat across from her. I did. And? Did he tell you the edited version or the real one? Nora held her coffee but didn't drink. Why don't you tell me yours? Olivia leaned back, crossing her legs. Her eyes were the same shape as Elise's in the photos, sharp, almond-shaped, hiding grief behind precision. My sister adored him, she began, and he adored her too, in the beginning. Before the empire grew teeth, she stirred her coffee slowly. But success devours time, then it devours people. He wasn't home, he wasn't present. Elise would call me crying some nights, wondering who he was with or what he was hiding. She was scared, Nora. Scared the man she married wasn't the man she had anymore. Nora kept still, listening. Then one day, Olivia continued, he insists on a family trip, on a boat, during a season when the currents were unpredictable at best. Elise hated the ocean, but she agreed, thinking maybe he was trying to fix things. Her voice grew quieter. She never came back. Olivia's eyes glimmered but didn't fall apart. She had perfected the art of suppressing tears. And now, she added, I see him circling you, circling your daughter, a child who looks familiar, too familiar. And I wonder what exactly he's looking for this time. Redemption, replacement, a convenient new chapter to overwrite the old? That's not fair, Nora said softly. Lily isn't... Ava, Olivia cut in. No, she isn't. But she's close enough that he might forget the difference. You think that's kindness? I think that's dangerous. She reached into her purse and slid a card across the table. You don't owe him anything. You don't owe this city anything. If you want to protect your daughter, you'll leave before history repeats itself. Nora didn't pick up the card. Olivia didn't wait for her to. The second voice, the second truth, told like a wound that refused to close. The Fairmont Lakeside Lounge smelled faintly of bergamot and polished marble. Everything gleamed, the chandeliers, the tea set, the windows looking out over the water like a painting. Margaret Hawthorne sat with queenly poise, her silver hair pinned perfectly, a strand of pearls resting at the curve of her collarbone. Nora, she said with a gracious nod, thank you for coming. Nora sat opposite her, spine straight. I'll get right to the point, Margaret said, hands folded lightly. You are a talented woman. I can see why Adrian values your work. There was a pause, subtle, intentional. But emotional currents are far more complicated than professional ones. Nora said nothing. My son has endured more than you can imagine, Margaret continued, and I fear that seeing your daughter every day is pulling him backward, not forward. She lifted her teacup. Grief is unpredictable when it latches onto the wrong anchor. I'm not an anchor, Nora replied, and Lily isn't a symbol. No, Margaret agreed gently, but she could easily become one, and neither of you deserve that burden. She reached into her handbag and slid an envelope across the table. It was thick. This is a trust fund starter for Lily, Margaret explained. More will be added if you choose relocation assistance, a new home in Portland, a position at a highly respected design firm, all arranged, all guaranteed. Nora's stomach tightened. And in return, she asked quietly. Margaret smiled kindly, but the firmness underneath that softness was unmistakable. You step away from Adrian's orbit. You and your daughter begin a new life, safe, comfortable, unentangled. Nora stared at the envelope without touching it. I don't want your money, she whispered. It isn't about money, Margaret replied. It's about preventing history from swallowing two lives that have done nothing to deserve it. The third voice, the third truth, spoken with elegance and iron. When Nora stepped out of the hotel, the wind off the lake stung her cheeks. The city felt louder, larger, heavier. Three voices, three versions of the same past, three different warnings. And she felt like someone dragged into an invisible courtroom, with no judge, no jury, only testimonies wrapped in grief and fear. The only certainty was that she and Lily were standing on a chessboard, and the Hawthorne family knew how to move every piece, except her, not yet. The next morning, Nora woke with a heaviness that felt older than sleep. Her phone buzzed with meeting reminders, project updates, unread messages from Gretchen, but she ignored them all. Today, she couldn't think like a designer, or a consultant, or a woman trying to make rent. Today, she needed to think like a mother. She called in a personal day, packed a small canvas bag with sandwiches, apple slices, and Lily's favorite butterfly coloring book. Then she bundled her daughter into a jacket and walked toward Lakeside Park, where the air smelled faintly of pine and warm grass. They spread a blanket beneath a maple tree glowing gold in the afternoon sun. Lily squealed as a monarch fluttered around her head and took off across the lawn, chasing after it with joyful determination. Nora watched her, tiny sneakers flashing, laughter echoing, curls bouncing, and her heart clenched. "Sweetheart," she whispered to no one but the wind, "what should we do?" The question hung heavy. Portland or Seattle? Disappear or stay and fight? Walk away from chaos or take a risk on a man whose life was made of fractures? Lily, ever intuitive, somehow sensed the weight pressing on her mother. She bounded back, cheeks flushed. "Mommy, look!" She held up her palms. "A butterfly sat here, right here." Nora kissed her hands gently. "Maybe it picked you because you were kind." Lily grinned proudly and ran off again. Nora leaned back, staring at the drifting clouds. Three voices still echoed in her head. Adrian's remorse, Olivia's fury, Margaret's polished warning. She felt like she was standing at the edge of a cliff with no safety net below. Soft footsteps approached behind her. She didn't turn at first, not needing to. She already knew the rhythm of that walk. Adrian stopped several feet away, hands at his sides, wearing jeans and a simple navy sweater. It was the least CEO she had ever seen him, and yet somehow the most himself. "Gretchen said you took the day off," he said quietly. "I didn't want to intrude. I just needed to make sure you were okay." Nora didn't invite him to sit. He didn't assume he could. He simply lowered himself to the grass at a respectful distance, elbows on his knees, eyes on the lake. For a long moment, neither spoke. "You look tired," Nora finally said. He huffed a soft, almost embarrassed laugh. "I am tired of pretending I have everything under control, tired of people writing versions of me I don't recognize, tired of carrying a grief that keeps changing shape." His gaze drifted toward Lily, chasing another butterfly. "But mostly," he added, voice softer, "I'm tired of being afraid of wanting something good." Nora turned to him. "And what is that, Adrian?" He didn't hesitate. "A chance. With you. With her. Not to replace what I lost. Not to fill a void. Just to build something that isn't broken." For the first time in a long while, he looked uncertain, open, vulnerable, stripped of every corporate layer he wore like armor. It startled her. "Why didn't you say that earlier?" she whispered. "Because I didn't know if I deserved to." His voice cracked slightly. "And because I didn't want you thinking Lily was some echo of Ava. She isn't. She's her own bright, unstoppable little person. I see that now." Silence settled again, gentle, not heavy. After a moment, Nora drew a slow breath. "If you want to be in our lives," she said, "there have to be boundaries, real ones." He nodded once. "Name them." "First," she said, "you help us find a new apartment, not owned, funded, or influenced by Hawthorne. Neutral ground." "Done." "Second, Lily comes first, always. No pressure, no expectations she doesn't understand. Of course. And third, Nora hesitated, searching his face. If I stay in Seattle, if I work on Harbor Grove long term, you have to accept that I won't cover for your past. I won't be a shield, and I won't let your family use us for leverage. He leaned forward. Nora, he said softly, I don't want a shield. He paused. I just want a chance to do better. A breeze tugged at the corner of the blanket, and Lily came skidding back across the grass. Mr. Adrian, she cried, delighted, you came to the park. He smiled, really smiled, like it surprised him how easily she brightened his world. I did, he said, and I'm hoping you'll share a cookie with me again. Lily giggled. Only the chocolate ones? Well, he replied, that's a relief. Those are my favorite too. Nora watched them, her heart softening slowly, like ice thawing after too long a winter. Maybe they could try. Not erase grief, not replace memories, but build something new, carefully, honestly, like constructing a house where the foundation had once cracked. Before she could speak, Lily tugged her hand. Mommy, she whispered loudly, can we keep him? Adrian choked on a laugh. Nora placed an arm around her daughter's shoulders. Honey, it doesn't really work that way. But he's nice, Lily insisted, and he listens, and he knows lots of things about buildings. Nora looked at Adrian, who met her eyes, not with pressure, not with desperation, but quiet hope. Maybe, Nora said, we can see where things go. Lily cheered and sprinted away again, chasing another butterfly. Nora reached out her hand. Adrian took it immediately, warm, steady, careful. A choice, a possibility, a beginning, not perfect, not simple, but theirs. 3 weeks later, Lily taped her newest masterpiece, a crayon drawing of 2 butterflies and 3 smiling stick figures, on the wall of their new apartment. It was small, sunlit, close to the waterfront, and most importantly, not connected to Hawthorne Holdings in any way. Neutral ground, safe ground. Nora stood beside Adrian in the hallway, watching Lily run from room to room, showing off her spaces like a tiny real estate agent. You did good, Nora said quietly. No, Adrian replied. You did. You chose to stay. She slipped her fingers between his. I chose to try. He lifted her hand and kissed the back of it, gentle, grateful. Are you both ready? He asked. We have an appointment at Harbor Grove. The model home's open. Today. Lily came racing toward them, waving her shoes. Let's go see the butterfly garden. Nora laughed, locking the door behind them. As they stepped down to the hallway, sunlight spilled across the floor in long, golden beams. Lily ran ahead, chattering about butterflies. Adrian walked beside Nora, matching her stride, and for the first time in a very long time, Nora felt not overwhelmed, but grounded, hopeful, choosing her path instead of being swept along by someone else's. The road ahead wouldn't be smooth. There would be ghosts, questions, family battles, and shadows yet to face. But this beginning was hers. And she was walking into it hand in hand with someone who finally understood how fragile a second chance could be.